Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 15 of the Tough Lift podcast. If you're joining us here on our video podcast, you'll be able to see today we are in a warehouse with our viewer here. Our guest rather, not viewer. He's not just watching, that'd be weird. Those of you on the podcast, you'll hear the amazing voice of Mr. Nat Arem. This gentleman right here is well known in the weightlifting community if you've been in it for a while. He is the owner and founder, and we'll say just overall guy of Hookgrip, which is a well-known weightlifting company in the Olympic weightlifting sport. And I would even, expand that into barbell sports. Other sports use your stuff, I'm sure, as I did when I was a CrossFitter doing stuff. But Hookgrip is a brand that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe was officially started 2011, right, Nat?
Yeah. Some aspects of it were kind of thought about and registered in 2010, but the first
Gotcha.
competition I went to was 2011. Like I bought the
Okay.
domain name and started formulating ideas in 2010.
There we go. It's technically also a shop, and do we call it a media brand? What do we
Yeah,
identify the camera angle? What is that? A media library? What do we officially call
yeah.
that
I
side
just
of
I
it?
just call it a brand. I mean, we do a combination of the merch stuff and the media stuff, and depending on the time of year and the actual year that it is and all sorts of things going on. We're focusing more on one or the other. But yeah, no, it's a bit of both. I would just call it a brand.
Sounds good. So guys, so Nat is actually at the warehouse, if you guys can see him, but he's doing this podcast. I asked him to be on because I think he provides a interesting, different aspect and kind of interview angle to our sport. If you are in weightlifting, as somebody that's been in the sport in a different perspective, so to say. So most of the people I bring on are in the coaching side of things or in the performance angle or the athlete themselves. He is literally watching the sport through a lens most of the time, or staring at it through a computer screen, or he is in the background watching athletes, coaches at work, stuff like that, and also on the business side of it. So a different aspect to this podcast. So I'm excited about this one. But now a lot of people don't know you per se. They don't know you nowadays, I would say, because the sport's actually grown up a bunch since you started, which is good. So the amount of people that have grown is just kind of, not as many people are out there that know you maybe. But also once they get to a certain level and maybe you're actually filming them regularly because they have reached a certain level, that's probably where most start to begin to get to know you personally, I would assume. But why don't you tell us like a little about you? Like, where are you from originally? Do you have a sporting background? Did you start lifting and that's how you fell in love with it? I know a little bit of your background, but like, where did it all get started, man? Hit us with that story.
I mean, just so not that it's that important, but just briefly, I'm from the Philadelphia area. Like I'm from basically the mainline suburbs of Philadelphia, which is the same area that like probably the best known person from there would be like Kobe Bryant or someone like that. Like Kobe Bryant grew up down the street from my house. Um,
Nice.
and I mean literally down the street. Like I would drive by his house all the time. But
Mm.
um, now I kind of live on the other side of Philly in the New Jersey suburbs, which is, both of them are about 20 minutes from Philadelphia, but just on opposite sides, really. Um, and then in terms of my sports background, I did play sports, obviously, as a kid, all through high school. I wasn't good enough or committed enough to play any sort of sport in college. Like I went to college for purely, academic reasons. I still continued to play like intramural sort of sports and stuff like that, but no like Division One. I mean, I went to a Division 3 school, but no, college NCAA sports. And then just kind of, I the thing is that I did pick up lifting and not Olympic weightlifting, but just weight training from a fairly young age. Like I remember my dad had these like plastic cement weights, if you know those kind of like 80s
Yeah.
style or 70. I don't even know what era they're from exactly, but he had some of those in the basement. So I went into the basement and started using those when I was like 9. Like
Nice.
uh, I don't remember exactly what age, but I was like quite young when I started doing that, and then I started to go to like a local rec center which was actually where I met Kobe Bryant because his dad worked there and he would be there putting up shots when he was in high school. But so I would go to this local rec center and I would do weight training. And I did do some variants of like barbell lifts, but never a snatch or a clean and jerk. I didn't even know what they were. There was no one there that did that. There were no true platforms of any kind,
Yeah.
stuff like that. There were some, squat rack sort of like squat cage sort of things that you would, do some squats in. But I didn't know what I was doing. But the way that I ended up getting into weightlifting more specifically is I was 20, let's see, 28, no, sorry, 27. I was 27. I was living abroad. I was in the Cayman Islands. I was working abroad kind of online. And when I was living there, I just Googled, I was living on the big island there, which is called Grand Cayman. And I just Googled Grand Cayman gym when I got there,
Hmm.
and just to stay active. Not, I didn't have particular goals. I wasn't thinking get stronger, do this. It was just kind of a stay active thing. And when I did that, I found that there were basically two Globo style gyms on Grand Cayman, and it's a small island. It has 50,000 people, maybe. Depends on time of year and whether there's a couple cruise ships in town, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
not many people. So I also saw that there was something called CrossFit Cayman had started, and this was in 2009. Um, and when I saw that, I'd never heard of CrossFit. I didn't know what any of that meant. I just Googled what is it, and I started reading about it a little bit, and then that was kind of what really kicked it off. Like I went there strictly because it just sounded more interesting than going to a gym and doing my old workout routine, which consisted of wandering from machine to machine and occasionally stepping into a squat rack cage sort of thing.
Yeah. I
And
think
I
that
had
story is told by many, man. That's similar to mine.
well, I had no program of any kind. My to pre going to that CrossFit, like I said, it would just be one of these things where I would get into the machine and I'd be like, you know what, I think I did this for like 11 of these plates last time for like 3 sets of 8. Yeah, I'll just do that again. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of just that
That's
was what
actually
my
my
program was.
problem now. I'm like so
Yeah.
regimented in Olympic lifting. Now I get in a machine. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah, I would just kind of wing it every time, and I would just kind of go there for an hour, feel more active, go home, and all right, that's fine. So
Yeah.
then anyway, so I started to go to CrossFit Cayman, and then most people know how the story goes from there. Like you know, you your eighth day there is like snatch day, and you're like what? And you just see people doing it. You do it super awkward. You're doing like everything terribly, and then you
Yeah.
just kind of progress from there. And that was kind of how I got introduced to it, and then how I actually ended up starting the business is a different thing, but that's how I got introduced to weightlifting in general.
Man, I would have never guessed you were down in the Cayman Islands. That's crazy.
I was 2009, 2010.
Nice. What did you go to college for? Can I ask?
Yeah, so I went to college fairly local to here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, kind of in Amish country. And I went to like my major was in business, and then I had another
Okay.
major in what they called government, which was basically political science.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I was, and like my business major was kind of concentrated in accounting and finance, and that was kind of the road I was going down, was kind of like maybe getting an MBA and
Yeah.
uh, going down that road, but I just, yeah,
There
did
you go.
not.
Now you're hustling 25-year-old Usaka bumpers online. That's how we do.
Oh yeah.
It
Well,
works.
those,
It's effective.
yeah. Well, those I don't think I would make a living from buying and selling weights, but
No,
yeah.
no, many try. So where did Hookgrip get started? When did that come into play?
Um, so I moved to Vegas from the Cayman Islands. Um, and I was still working with the same group of people, but we decided to move to Vegas. And when I moved to Vegas, it was once again, okay, now I was doing CrossFit, so I looked for a local CrossFit gym. And then I was also looking around because I was getting more interested in weightlifting. I was looking around for weightlifting gyms, and then I discovered the John Bros weightlifting channel. Just I think it's just called Bros Knows on YouTube. I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
he ever changed that name or not, but um, I discovered that where he was, and this was just a pure coincidence. I discovered that where his old gym was, which he now calls ABG1, because they had a second one and then a third one, depending on which time period you're talking about. But I discovered that ABG1 was literally down the street from where I was living, just out of pure coincidence.
Hmm.
And so I just got more and more into weightlifting through. I kind of went there for a couple training sessions. I became friends with bros. We talked a lot about business and training and this thing and that thing. I was training mainly in my garage. I had a garage gym with a platform and uh,
Gotcha.
bumpers, bars, all this stuff. Um, and I just got more and more into weightlifting. And I remember in the fall of 2010, I was trying to watch the Worlds in Turkey. I think it was in like September 2010 or something. It was in Antalya, and I was just like baffled that I was like, wait, this is Worlds and there's no coverage. Like I couldn't find a live stream. I couldn't find it on TV. Now, I'm sure if I'd known then what I know now, I would have figured out that I could have gone onto like illegal Eurosport live streams and watched it. So
Yeah.
I know that it was possible to watch theoretically, but it was like just such a shit show, for lack of a better
Yeah. You had to
word, in terms of like
jump through so
I
many hoops to do it.
yeah, I couldn't find photos anywhere. I couldn't really even find news articles. I remember the best coverage that I found, which, and I'm not saying that he did good or bad coverage every year through the years, but by this time he was not doing much in the way of coverage. And I'm talking about Randy Strassen from Iron Mind.
Hmm.
So I remember the best news coverage I could find was actually on Iron Mind,
Yeah.
and he just did like kind of a couple reports where I remember he posted a picture. I think it was like of Liao Hui doing a backflip, and there were like a couple bits of media and a little bit of reports, but this was before the days of people like myself and Gregor and other people uploading clips quickly, and
Hmm.
you know uh, YouTube videos and Instagram videos and TikTok videos and everything.
Yeah.
And so there was just nothing there. And that was what made me think, you know, maybe I'll do something related to this in the future. And that was when I started thinking about, well, what would I do? What sort of business name would it be? What would I focus on? Because keep in mind, I was still doing CrossFit, so I was still considering doing stuff related to CrossFit, doing
Hmm.
media stuff related to CrossFit. The thing is that the CrossFit media was uh, literally 10,000 times more competent than weightlifting media.
Yeah. They had a
And
lot of
and
good
by
media.
yeah, and by that I mean even the people like the not like the exterior media. I'm talking about like the CrossFit HQ media of those years, like 2010, 2011, 2012. They were um they were pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
they did a good job promoting their sport, and it's one of the reasons the sport grew so much.
Yep.
And anyway, so I just, um, you know, it was a combination of all these factors, like bad 2010 Worlds coverage. Um, it was also the fact that CrossFit was relatively good and not super friendly to outside coverage. And then it was also an event that happened in my prior work in April of 2011, which was basically the stuff I used to do was related to online poker.
Hmm.
And there was a big event in April of 2011 where it's called Black Friday in the poker community,
Hmm.
but basically a bunch of poker site owners were indicted. And that was not me, by the way. We didn't actually have any
Be
gambling
clear.
sites. Yeah, just to
Yeah.
be clear.
You
What
not
I
own the
did,
site.
I didn't own any site that you could gamble on.
Yeah.
Or not only did I not own it, I wasn't involved in any way. I wasn't like an employee or consultant,
Yeah.
whatever. But the poker site owners were indicted, and that caused basically a mass exodus of poker sites from the U.S. And what I mean is that they weren't offering games to people who lived in the U.S.
Gotcha.
And the problem was that caused our company's revenue to go down by about 80% overnight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, which was, you know, okay because it was actually a pretty big company. We had like 70 employees, and it was me and a few other guys who owned it and ran it. And we still had enough revenue to make it a viable business, but we didn't really have enough to run it the way we'd been running it.
Hmm.
So we had to like drastically scale things down, and I basically told my co-owners, I guess I would say, like, hey, I'll leave early, um, if because I basically had a contract that went through for longer than when I was
Yeah.
leaving. I basically said, hey, listen, I'll leave early and everything, assuming that my stock in the company vests and blah blah blah, some other like financial details related to
Yeah.
it. But basically, you guys can just stop paying me a salary because the company can't really afford to be paying larger salaries or whatever. And
Yeah.
so I left, and that was summer 2011, a few months basically after the event in the poker world, and that was when I decided, okay, you know what, I'm gonna like pursue this as this weightlifting thing, and I'm gonna book a ticket to Worlds. So I went to Worlds in Paris in 2011, which was my first competition.
Gotcha.
So that
So
was kind of like,
did you
yeah.
have any, like, at this point, camera experience? Had you been doing camera stuff, or like you just basically grabbed shit and started learning?
I really didn't. Maybe compared to the person who has never owned a camera, I did, and that's strictly because both my grandmother and my dad on different sides, like my grandmother on my mom's side and my dad obviously on my
Hmm.
dad's side, um, both of them were very into photography.
Okay.
And so like I'd been in like my grandmother's dark room in her basement,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
my dad, and I'd like developed some photos and film and stuff with her in the past. Obviously, I didn't know what I was doing because I was like 8, but
Yeah.
and then my dad was always very into photography, so I would sometimes like grab his camera on vacations and start changing dials, messing up his settings, not knowing what I was doing, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
You've been around it though. You were exposed to them.
Yeah, but I didn't own a camera.
Gotcha.
So like I went to Worlds not owning a camera or a single lens. I didn't have a DSLR of any kind. Probably, of course I had a cell phone camera, but the cell phone cameras of those days were pretty
Much different.
pretty weak. Yeah. I actually still have some of the photos from that. I think I had like a Nexus One or something. It was like one of the like very early Google phones, kind of
Yeah.
like the predecessor to the like the Pixels or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but the anyway, so I bought a lens. I like went on B&H and bought like a good Nikon lens. But I was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to like invest in like a good camera right now. So I borrowed my dad's like 10-year-old Nikon camera, which was terrible. Um, like even for that era, it was pretty bad. But it was a digital camera that could accept the lens I had bought. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna just go with it.
There you go.
So I borrowed his camera, which was, very nice of him to lend me for that. And then I went there with no media pass. Like I found, I don't know, actually, this is kind of surprising now looking back on it, but I found a way to buy a ticket for the whole time online.
There you go. Yeah.
And
That's back
this
then
is
is
weird.
interesting.
This is weird because I've been to many events since then. And I would say the number of events I've been to since then where you could buy a ticket online was like under 5%.
Yeah.
And I'm talking international. Obviously, like USA weightlifting, you can buy tickets and stuff, but I'm talking like an international one. It's almost only like the games events, like Pan Am Games or Asian Games or something like that, where I've seen ways to buy tickets. like your typical Worlds, there's no tickets. Like what? There's,
Yeah, I can't think
Worlds,
of
Pan
any with the
Ams, like
meets
Pan Ams.
that we've traveled to, because that's one of the questions that like parents or loved ones always ask on the team chat. They're always like, "How do I get a ticket to come watch?" And we're like, "We'll try to get you one." There's
I
nowhere
mean,
to buy a ticket. Like you just show
there's
up and
almost no
ask.
tickets. And the other
Yeah.
thing too is that I collect tickets, and I by collect tickets I mean outside of weightlifting and within weightlifting.
Oh yeah.
And so whenever I see tickets at an event, I always buy them, even if I don't need it. I just buy ticket. I mean, I assume if they were extremely expensive, I wouldn't. But if tickets are just a few dollars each, I'm gonna just buy tickets because I just want to save copies of them. So, as an example, in 2019 at Asians in China in Ningbo, they had they had very like beautiful tickets printed up, like on like
Mhm.
nice cardstock, with this like really nice like yellow kind of like glossy like they clearly put some effort into the tickets. It wasn't just
Yeah.
like someone went
Wasn't a
like Dennis
yellow
Reno
little
style and like copied some.
bingo ticket.
No, it wasn't like some generic ticket. I wouldn't buy
Yeah.
that, but it was a really nice ticket. So I just went outside and I just bought a full set of tickets, and I just have them just as a more as a collectible than anything. But
Yeah.
anyway, I managed to buy a ticket, which unfortunately for 2011 Worlds was not an actual ticket. It was just a wristband that I had to wear the whole time. So it was just I just had a wristband that just has like the Worlds logo. I still have it. I saved it, but
Yeah.
I just bought a ticket to Worlds and went there and shot it. Pretty much, I
Nice.
did a terrible job. Like I didn't know what I was doing. Um, you know, I talked about Bros a little bit earlier, but Bros went there with me. Like we got like a hotel room next to each other, and he was kind of doing some tourism, and also he was there, and his athlete Pat Mendez was there lifting for the
Hmm.
U.S. So he had multiple reasons to be there. So and he did come watch some weightlifting, but I was there pretty much all day, every day, and he was kind of in and out. But I remember the first day, and also I should mention too, he knows a good amount about photography. He's a good photographer.
Yeah.
Um, he, I remember the first day he asked me, he's like, "So what are your settings in there?" And I said my settings, and he was like, "What?" Like my
Yeah.
settings were truly terrible. And
Yeah.
this isn't a photo podcast, so I'm not going to go into the details. But like my settings were awful the first day, so I had to change a whole bunch of things. The camera wasn't really capable of shooting good indoor shot, like indoor high speed, low light situations. You need a good camera, and
Yeah.
I didn't have it, so um, it wasn't all my fault why the pictures from there were bad, but it was a combination of bad camera and
Oh, you're learning.
no
You were there
knowledge.
trying, which is respectable, and that's
Yeah, I mean,
where
I
everyone's got
I
to
got
start.
some
So.
yeah, I got some okay stills. Obviously, I was only taking stills at this point, but I learned a couple lessons there. Like I learned I should really bring a monopod to these things. Like I was sitting there holding the camera the whole time, and like it doesn't feel heavy the first like half an hour, and then
Yeah.
6 hours in, you're like, I remember my forearms were just killing me by
Yeah.
the end of the
You're just
week. But
roasted.
yeah,
Yeah. That's crazy, man. That's a good adventure, man. Like that's the type of that's the start you want. It's an adventure start is kind of what I call it that. I like people that they start their business, if you will, by jumping off the cliff versus
yeah.
kind of like slowly skating into it. That's more my style. So that's a
I mean,
good good
I
start.
did do, it depends on which aspect you're talking about, but like for instance, I didn't start the store for over or not over a year. It was about a year almost exactly from like Worlds to the first thing that I put up for sale
Hmm.
or even
Yeah.
having a store of any kind. And that also started slowly where it was just like one or two t-shirt options and that was it
Yeah.
being shipped out of my apartment in Philadelphia
Yep.
and then adding a few things here and there and whatever like certain things you have to build up slowly
Oh,
over
for sure.
time and then
Yeah.
certain things but yeah I think just um the thing is that I knew that if I didn't go to Worlds that like kind of that media would just be like gone forever. Like I've always had that attitude about uh, events and shooting stuff and just going to things. It's just like you can't. It's very rare that I'm like, man, I really regret having gone to that.
Yeah.
You know, because once like the moment happens, like you can't get that photo or video back, or you can't like
Yeah.
redo it. You know, so I kind of went into it with that attitude, was like just go to it and kind of figure this part out later, because I hadn't really formulated like a real business idea. I had like 5 or 6 different pathways in my mind for what avenue I was going to go down with
Mhm.
Hookgrip. And what I ended up with was kind of one of the ideas I was thinking about early on. But like I had like a bunch of different ideas and different things, and I didn't know what would work. I just knew that I liked weightlifting a lot, and I knew that there was bad coverage of it, and I knew that I always loved photo media stuff, even if I wasn't
Yeah.
doing it. I should mention another thing too. For 2 years in college, I was basically in charge of like the digital video club in our college. And this was, I was in college from 2000 to 2004. And this was like the very early days of like workable digital video. It wasn't
You
being
were
shot onto
slaying it on
cards.
MySpace, weren't you?
It was, yeah, I was sending it. Well, I don't think you could do that at the
People
time. Like,
people listening to this will not know what MySpace is, by the way.
I mean,
If
they,
you want
they,
to
they
feel
won't
old
know
as
anything
fuck
of
for
what
a
I'm about to talk
second.
about if I talk about it. But like at the time there was no YouTube, and I don't think things like MySpace supported videos. Like the dominant video player online of the day was something called Real Player, if you remember that.
Yeah, I know Real Player.
So I have no idea what happened to that, but it was very awkward and difficult to upload any sort of videos. It was actually, the cameras of those days didn't shoot onto cards; they shot onto DV tapes, like mini DV, which are
Yeah.
basically digital tapes, but they're tapes, right? They're not a card.
Mhm.
So it's actually a spinning thing that has ones and zeros on it.
Yeah.
Um, and I actually still have some mini DV tapes that I shot in college.
Mm.
Um, what's interesting too is it's like, the footage is a lot better than you would think for what it was, because it was such a massive, massive step up from VHS. Like when I
Yeah.
look at my dad's old VHS tapes, it literally just looks like, 7 pixels by four
Colored
pixels
sand.
on the, yeah, it's like you have no idea what's going on. Whereas the DV stuff is actually pretty, I mean, it's not good. It looks it's got that retro look to it, with like
Yeah.
you can see the progressive interlace, or sorry, the interlace lines and stuff and whatever on the screen refreshes, but
Yeah.
it's like it's actually okay, you know. But anyway, so I was in charge of this like digital video club, and we had a couple digital video cameras, and we had like a very, now looking back on it, very rudimentary, but at the time it was a very advanced kind of like Apple editing station that we could actually. It was novel at the time that you could import a digital video and
Yeah.
like edit it. So
Yeah.
you know, combining all these things, that I was kind of thinking about the fact that I knew I kind of liked photography, even though I didn't know anything about it. I knew I liked digital video, and I had a little bit of experience with it from that in college, just because I was always interested in it. Um, and all that stuff just kind of combined, and that's kind of how I ended up with this. But yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know at the time, and I didn't even know for several years after starting Hookgrip exactly which direction I was going with it as a business.
So would you say the filming aspect is still the passion, or the business side is the passion, or both?
The filming stuff is definitely a passion of mine for sure. Um, but to me, it's kind of like taken different forms over the years. At one point it was I'm trying to get like very like cool looking photos. I would take more like artsy different angles and different zoom levels and all sorts of different
Yeah.
things. I would kind of like edit the photos a bit more and put them on like our Facebook page or whatever.
Yeah.
And and then later it was about like, oh, I'm trying to get like really cool kind of like slow motion stuff because kind of no one else has that. Um, and we've been doing slow motion footage now. It's actually February 2014 will be 10 years from when I bought a, a, a slow motion camera. So
Yeah.
it's been 10 years, and obviously for a long time we were really the only ones shooting good slow motion.
Hmm.
And then in more recent years, the camera technology has caught up a bit, and it's easier for other people to do it now. And so people like Gregor and others are very focused on it. And so
Yeah.
I'm not so focused on kind of shooting stuff and uploading slow-mo videos anymore. Because for me, I really like to do stuff that's different than what other people are doing.
Yep.
And so one thing you might have noticed is that at national meets now, so I did this in Colorado and I did it in Wilmington at AO finals. Like what I'm really focused on now, like I didn't take a single picture at either one of those meets. I only took videos, and I tried to cover everything. Like I have several cameras set up. I'm using HDMI broadcasters so I can kind of see what each camera looks like. I'm using remote triggers, and I'm just sitting there in one spot. The whole like at AO finals, I literally sat in the exact same spot the entire time,
Yep.
and I just try to focus, just try to get good video of every platform. And on top of that, I'm trying to get the videos out really quick. So,
Yeah.
like, I was getting people who used Hookgrip knee sleeves or knee wraps. I got them their videos. Most people, their videos were uploaded like in 12 to 15 hours
Yeah.
after
No,
it happened.
you were really on top of that. It was noticed too. The
Yeah.
community noticed that really quickly.
So I got those videos out as fast as possible, but I was also trying to shoot everything. Now, I didn't manage to shoot the 8 a.m.s because the days were just too long. And I had to choose basically between the 8 a.m.s or the 8 p.m.s. The reason being that if you do both, you end up, especially when you're trying to shoot three platforms at once for several days in a row, you just lose concentration. Like
Yeah.
most people, I think, couldn't do it anyway. Like they would be just missing tons of lifts left and right.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm missing some lifts. Like no one's going to get everything when you have three platforms going for that many sessions. But I just needed, I can do 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So I had to choose, and I ended up skipping the 8 a.m.s. But I basically was doing, I did everything else basically from 10 a.m. on. Um, and so basically, that's kind of like a new thing for me. And that's something I've been doing now for the last few years. I've also done it at a lot of international meets. And I started to do it about 2 years ago, where I would send people their videos for free if they were wearing hook grip knee stuff. And
Yeah.
that's not what people think. Like um, most people assume that the reason I'm doing that is way different than the actual reason I'm doing that. Like almost everyone, I would say 98% of the people that I talk to about that think
Hmm.
that it's either about driving sales
Yeah.
or driving people to use the stuff,
Hmm.
right? It's literally under 2% of the reason is about driving sales. I would say about 8% of the reason is about getting people to use the stuff, just kind of like having more visibility of our stuff at national meets.
Yeah.
But those are both like huge, like in the minority reasons. The actual reason that I'm doing that, and like almost all of the reason that I'm doing that, is because I was going to meets, I was shooting tons of stuff, and I just woke up one day in like 2021, and I was like, it's 10 years later, and I am that person who goes to stuff and doesn't upload that I was complaining about in 2011.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like
it's the age
I
old
was
quote from Batman. You lived long enough to become the villain, dude.
I know. So I basically I woke up and I just said, you know what? Like I'm going to these meets. And by the way, there were reasons for it, which I'm going to get into in a second. But like I would go to these meets and I would shoot a couple thousand videos and 100,000 photos, and I would get home, and because of all the stuff you're seeing around me, and you're
Yeah,
by the way, what you have in view is about a quarter of the warehouse.
yeah,
Because of all the stuff around me, I would get home and I would just be too busy to upload stuff. And then I also, I was shooting on unnecessarily complicated cameras. Like I was shooting on these cinema cameras that, don't get me wrong, they produce incredible images. And I don't regret having shot on them because they gave me the ability to shoot stuff like 4K, 120 frame per second video
yeah.
literally 4 years before anyone else. So, I have videos going back to like 2017 Worlds and even before that in 4K 120, whereas no one else really had them until maybe like 2021 or something like that. Um, but I was shooting on these unnecessarily complicated cameras that made my editing much, much slower. They're the types of videos that the sound isn't attached to them. Like you've got to go like take the sound file and line it up, and the video
Yeah.
is in slow-mo, and you have to remember like what frame rate you shot it at so you can speed it up to the correct percentage.
Oh,
You have
it's
to like,
movie grade, effectively.
yeah, and it's all shot in this log format, so it's like heavily desaturated, and you have to apply these LUTs to it to make the colors look right and blah blah. Like there was no way for me to quickly send stuff out, and so I would go to these meets and I would shoot these couple thousand videos, and however many 100,000 photos, and then I would realize like 2 months later I'm like, I've uploaded like 24 videos from that whole meet, and
Yeah,
I have over 2,000.
yeah.
And I was just like,
I mean, it's
I was like,
kind of to give people like a perspective. It's almost like wedding photography. Honestly, like wedding photographers will go to a wedding and they'll shoot thousands of photos, and then like hand over maybe like 50 of them to like 100 to the couple. It's like
well,
there's a lot.
I don't know about that. I mean, we got like 1,000 from our wedding photographer, but
Well, I mean, like the pristine like top. These are the best ones. You get the full like model
yeah,
photos that you
maybe.
get all of them, but
But basically, so in 2021, I was thinking about this a lot, and it was really bothering me because I didn't want to become, and I'm not trying to call any of these people out when I say their names,
yeah.
because they weren't shooting for the general public. So I don't
Mhm.
blame them for what they were doing. I'm just saying I didn't want to become like the Randy Strassen or the Jim Schmidt or the at the time Bruce Clemens. Of course, now he's uploaded much more, and at the time he was still uploading to Flickr, and now he's uploading more to Facebook and stuff like that. But there were quite a few people who would go to meets, like Jim Schmitz is an example, where he would go to meets and he wouldn't really upload. Now, once again, I'm not in any way upset at Jim Schmitz for doing that because
Yeah.
that's just what he does, and I don't blame him for it. But I didn't want to be that. I wanted our media to get out there, and it was bothering me that the media wasn't out there. So I was trying to think about ways that I could feel okay about giving people media, right?
Maybe that's the new shirt you need. It needs to say the people's media.
Yeah, I don't know if I
Hookgrip,
want to
the
go down that
people's
road.
media.
Yeah. But like I was just like, how can I feel good about giving the media away in a way that a lot more media will get out there, and I won't feel like I'm just kind of being, I don't know if taken advantage of is the right word, because you can't take advantage of someone who is voluntarily giving you media, but it basically
Yeah.
would feel fair to me would be the best way to put it. And so I was thinking about different ways to do it, and I also realized I needed to change cameras. I needed to get a camera that I could, and this was also possible at the time. what I was contemplating at the end of 2021 when I was thinking about all this was not that so much that uh, I couldn't have, or it was basically like something that I couldn't have done a year or two before because the cameras just didn't exist. So
Yeah.
I invested literally 20 to 25 to $30,000 in new camera gear in early the first half of 2022. It was actually a really big investment over a fairly short period of time. Like I'm used to like, oh, I bought a new $1,000 lens or whatever, but like that much
That's a
money in new
sizable
camera
chunk.
gear is substantial. So I also upgraded the camera equipment for my shooter that who I have in Europe and all that stuff. And I did all of this in the idea that I would be able to send this video out really, really quick. And I thought the best way to get the video out there quick was to come up with something that I could think of as a fair kind of trade. And the best thing I could think of was the knee sleeves. And the reason I did knee sleeves or knee wraps was because of all the type of equipment that we sell, we
Hmm.
have by far the best line for knee stuff. You know, for wrist wraps, for instance, we only have one type, really. I mean, we have them where they close with string or Velcro, but a lot of people like to use thinner ones that are kind of like not so wide like this. They want them to
Yep.
be like an inch or less.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're actually going to offer fairly soon. And another example would be belts. Like historically, we would sell leather, like the Russian leather belts, but we don't have
Yep.
Velcro belts, which once again is something we're going to add pretty soon. But I was just like, you know what? If there's one thing that we basically cover almost everyone on, it's knee stuff. Like if
Yeah.
you can't find a
100%.
knee product here that you like, then you're either in the minority, uh, which is some people, or uh, you just don't like to wear knee stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And so basically, that was why I came up with the knee sleeve thing or knee wrap thing, and that was really what it was. It was about how do I go to meets and get a lot of good footage out there because what I really wanted to do from the get go with Hookgrip was like make weightlifting look better, make it look like make the media look more professional, like I saw with some of the stuff that CrossFit would do.
Hmm.
And I was like, what's the point of shooting all this great like 4K high quality, high def media that's like super high end, whatever, if no one ever sees it? And the
Yeah.
thing is that we historically have sold very little digital media. And that's a combination of a few things. One is people have phone videos. Two is, you know, people don't want to pay for it because there are weightlifting, you're already losing money if you're doing it
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Okay.
99.9% of people.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to add on the cost of media. And three is that a lot of people don't even know that we sell digital media. Um, and so all those things combined, or they just don't feel like it, whatever. All those things
That was one
combined
thing
to
when I got my videos, to interrupt you, like when I got my videos from AO Finals, people were like, "Where'd you get those?" I was like, "I went to the website. Like they made a post about it. You can go buy it." They're like, "I didn't know that." I'm like, "Have you been on Earth? Like they've always kind of made their stuff like." I feel like you just need to pay attention, or like it wasn't
yeah,
hard to find. People just need to open their eyes.
yeah. I mean, the other thing too is that historically, I never ever market the digital media. Actually, AO
Yeah.
Finals was the first time I've ever marketed digital media really in any way on any Hookgrip property that I can think of.
Yeah.
And I only did it obviously on Hookgrip USA, which is a somewhat dead account in the fact that I don't keep up with it
Mm.
very routinely. So, the number of people who saw it on there is fairly low compared to the reach I could get on the Hookgrip account. But,
The main thing. Yeah.
it's not as relevant to most of the Hookgrip followers to like buy your AO finals media or whatever. And I also,
Yep.
the other thing too is that part of the like knee sleeve stuff is that it actually drives a lot of sales for the digital media. And
Mhm.
the reason is that I sent out, so I think I remember the total videos. I think it was 751 videos for free and I only remember that because I made a story or two about it. But there were 751 videos from AO finals of someone wearing knee sleeves or knee wraps with our basically brand on it. And by the way, I don't differentiate if like the logo fell off or whatever. Like I'll still count it either way.
Yeah.
But when I say that, I mean like what you were. I think you were using the Russian wraps, and you were like, "Oh, those are from Hookgrip." I'm like, "No, no, no. When we say Hookgrip wraps, we mean like the ones that we make."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so, and by the way, we literally make them right here on this sewing machine.
There you go, guys. The exclusive right there.
Here's the
I'm still gonna fight Nat to make the
here's
ones
the
that have Velcro.
here's the logos that are
There we go.
kicking
Behind the
around.
scenes going on.
So anyway, uh, the thing is that when you send out that many videos, a lot of people are posting them, and then a lot of people ask those people, "Hey, where'd you get them from?" And they're like, "Oh, I got them from Hookgrip." And then they write to me and they say, "Oh, can I buy them?" And I'm like, "Yep." And they already know kind of what they look like because now they've seen them and they've seen that they're good. Like I even put up a little editing tutorial on Hookgrip USA about, okay, here's how you take your video that's like this and make it like this and make it vertical and post
I
it
think I
like that.
saw that. I think I remember
Well,
seeing that.
well, I told people to do that because it looks so much better. You know, we're shooting in 4K, and you don't need, um, you don't need like the resolution. You know what I mean? Like you have plenty of resolution if you just chop it to this middle part.
Yeah.
It'll look perfectly fine if you do it the right way. Now, people do it the wrong way all the time, which is they pinch to zoom in Instagram, which is a bad idea because that's not going to crop the video properly. It's going to be much more pixelated because Instagram doesn't actually, it's complicated, but Instagram doesn't do it the right way, like if you did it in your camera roll. So I
Yeah.
basically put up that little tutorial, and every time I saw someone tag me or post the videos the wrong way, I literally just sent them that tutorial. And like 80% of people deleted their video in like 15 minutes and then re-uploaded the
Because they
tutorial.
know they like offended you possibly. They're like, oh no, his
I mean,
art.
it's not so much that I'm offended. I'm just like, you guys
Yeah.
are kind of blowing it because this is one of the better competition
Yeah.
videos that you're going to have of yourself, right?
Yep.
And it's not anything that I'm doing that like, oh, I'm some sort of like video magician. It's just that I'm shooting with good equipment, you know,
Yep.
and I'm shooting with stuff that's going to give you like that nice like out of focus background, and it's going to be high resolution, and it's going to be in focus, all that stuff. So it's like you might as well take advantage of it looking good or whatever.
Yeah.
So
100%.
anyway, the giving the stuff out for knee sleeves, like I said, it was really about not being that person that shoots a ton of stuff and nothing ever gets uploaded. Um, and I knew, or I know in general, I'm never, at least not in the short term, I'm not going to be able to maintain a upload schedule like I had in the past. Like
Yeah.
in like 2015 to 2019 range, I think I was uploading pretty much a video a day.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just not going to be able to do that anymore, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for why. But I was like, you know what? I want to get the videos out there, and that was the way to do it. But though all those knee videos are actually good advertising for the digital media, and AO Finals was the first time I can ever think of that I made money on a trip to a USA meet that wasn't booth related. Like I think we made
Yeah.
money in Detroit when we did a booth at Nationals in 2021, but like every other
Yeah.
meet has been a fairly big loss. Like a typical expenditure would be in the 1,000 to 1,800 range, depending on how long the meet is, how far away
Yeah.
it is,
That's
and blah blah.
understandable.
Somewhere
Yeah.
in that range, between flights, airport parking, blah blah, all the normal stuff that everyone has. And then I would say typical digital media sales from something other than AO Finals, which we actually had good digital media sales, but typical digital media sales would be like 20 people or something.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's not enough money. I mean, 20 sets of videos at $40 is $800,
Yeah. Doesn't
which is
make
not enough
the math.
money to even cover that. And there were lots of meets where I would pay to have another person shooting. That would cost more money and blah, 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 blah. Like there were
Hire people
plenty,
for the
and
booth and stuff like that.
well, the booth's a little different because the booth actually sells some stuff and you make money from it. So I have to like
Gotcha.
separate that. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
ones where we just went to cover it.
Gotcha.
Uh, it was generally, lose $1,000 to $2,000 a pop was like the general math of any digital media to expenses consideration. Now still went because I was still interested in getting a lot of the best lifts, but um, yeah. Anyway, AO Finals was like the first time that I can really think of that we actually did well with digital media, which was cool. Um, you know, I mean, to me, like, way, way, way back, like 20, 30 minutes ago, whenever I always give long answers to everything, by the way.
It's
But,
all good.
you were asking, like, is the media stuff your passion? And like I said, it changed over the years. Like from one thing to another thing to another thing. Me shooting slow-mo video and putting up a video a day of slow-mo video, I would not classify as my current passion.
Yeah.
Now, will I still like upload some slow-mo videos here and there? Yeah, of course. But, and then there's also lots of stuff related to the products that I'm passionate about and stuff I've learned over the years about how to make things. Like we make
Mm-hmm.
way more stuff in-house now than we used to. And I would like to make that even more stuff in-house.
Yeah.
We'll never be 100%. There's always got to be some stuff made
Well,
elsewhere.
like me
But
and you shoot the shit at meets, and like one thing I like talking to you about is like you authentically do get excited like talking about things that you're making or you're working on creating. Like it's always nice as like a business owner, like hearing you as a business owner excited about what you're creating. It's not just like, yup, some new shirts. Like that's the end of the fucking conversation. It's like,
no,
cool, apparel guy. Like, no, like the last time we were talking about some of that like Kevlar stuff, and we don't need to go down that like that rabbit hole conversation, but like you can generally tell from your conversation you're excited about the products that you're working on. And that was like that second question I talked about, like what you guys are doing different than other brands and what you're moving and how you stay motivated and switching gears and stuff like that. So you definitely tapped on that.
yeah. I mean, I definitely am always, uh, interested in different product related stuff. And I really like, what I really, really like is, or what really gets me interested in the product stuff is I want to do something different than other people that's like a compelling product. And it can be compelling for a few reasons. I either want to like crush people on price related to value, like if I can take a product that someone else makes that they sell for $50 and I can make a really, really good, like even better or comparable quality for like 20,
Mm.
to me that gets me really interested. What I'm not so interested in is just making the same old thing that everyone else has. Like as an example, with Velcro belts, it is very easy to go to like Pakistan or China and slap your logo on a belt that just looks like every other Velcro belt out there
Amen.
and have nothing special. Just have like a normal kind of crappy uh belt buckle where the ones where like this is the part coming in with the Velcro and this is the buckle and like
Yep.
you see the nylon strap coming through just like crush up like this.
I love that
And
your phone just triggered the hearts. That's the best. Go
oh,
Apple.
did it trigger hearts? That's
It
awesome.
just triggered the hearts.
I didn't even see it. That's fine. I wasn't even paying attention.
That's the
But
best.
like
You're now Lydia Valentin. Good job.
Valentine. Yeah,
Yeah, Valentin, sorry.
but the ones where you see the buckle turning sideways and it's like this, and the belt just looks like all shitty because it's like
Yeah.
one side's way higher than the other. Like I see that hundreds of times a competition. Maybe not hundreds of times a competition, but I see it hundreds of times a year. Put it that way.
Yep.
And anyone can do that. That's not what I'm interested in, and that's the reason why we don't have a Velcro belt because I actually I have like 3 or 4 different ideas for Velcro belts that I think are unique. Um, And I want to like make something that's, and here's the other problem too. So those kind of crappy intro level, and a lot of people don't charge intro level prices for them. A lot of people are like, yeah, $50, even though it's a it's a belt that you can buy from Harbinger on Amazon for like $17 Amazon Prime.
Yep.
It's the same thing, but it's 50 or $60. Um, I don't mind the idea of charging 50 or $60 for a belt. Like an example would be like the shake belts that are made in the US. Those are actually worth 50 or $60. Those have better materials, those are better made. I know like Kate Vibert was using one for a long time, and then I think she switched to a leather belt. But an example would be something like those belts, where I don't have a problem with 50 or $60 for a belt or more. It just depends on the belt. Especially leather belts, I think, can justify higher prices. But like, what really gets me like interested in it is like, what can I do to like make it better or make it cheaper? Now, if every I would call them intro level. I'm not going to call them shitty because they're not necessarily shitty. They're just intro level Velcro belts.
Yeah.
And I would put them on the classification of like the classic black Harbinger belt that, like I said, you can get for under $20 oftentimes on Amazon Prime. There's nothing wrong with those belts, but to me, the idea of charging $50 for that belt is kind of like sickening. Like the idea of
Yeah.
our brand doing that would bother the shit out of me. Um, and if we were to charge $50 for a belt, I would want it to be a lot better, or more money or whatever. And so the problem is that with the belt market, I can't come in and make a really compelling intro belt for eight, you know,
Yeah.
and with like the Harbinger and Valeos of the world out there on kind of just making product en masse on Amazon and other places like that, you can't really beat anyone on price
No.
with like the same quality, because those belts are actually pretty good, like for the price. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't really beat the Harbinger belt for the price, in my opinion. So when I'm interested in products, it's like I've got to feel like I'm beating people on either price or quality or uniqueness. If I'm not beating someone on one of those, I'm just not interested. An
Mm-hmm.
example would be something like our neoprene knee sleeves, like our $35 a pair 7 millimeter knee sleeves. Do I think those are better than the Ray-Ban sleeves? Like, no. Like the Ray-Ban sleeves are really good. The Ray-Ban sleeves are also like $80,
Yeah.
you know? And that's like, I feel like I'm beating Ray-Ban on like price to quality by a lot. And so kind of like that's where I'm coming from when I say like I've got to like beat them on something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yep.
uh, that's that's like the thing that really drives me with the product is like I'm very interested in the idea of kind of identifying those opportunities or situations where we can kind of like find our place in that market. And so that's kind of what drives me with the products is trying to look for those situations or opportunities where we're able to do that. And there's lots of things where I haven't found a good way to do it yet. An example being Velcro belts. It's the reason we don't have them. Now, for a long time, we only sold the Russian leather belts, which, by the
Yep.
way, I thought were an honestly incredible value because we priced them for a long time. The black belts were 65, and then I think I
I
made them
believe
70.
that's when I got mine, which is still used at 4 Star. Like it's one of my spare belts that like I don't use it anymore, but like we have in our spare belt rack and people use still to this day. It still works. I've had it for since you guys made them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, those belts, there were one or two issues with them in the very early batches. Now these are issues that we can fix for people. If anyone writes into us and says, "Hey, I have one of these issues," the nice thing about those belts is they're easily fixable.
Yeah.
So we've actually there's been lots of cases where either we've mailed out supplies to people who wanted to
I
do it
think you guys
themselves.
did. I think we had something wrong with a rivet or like the metal clasp. And I
Yeah,
think I did write to you guys, and you sent me a new piece.
yeah.
I think that was the only thing I had.
We either sent people new pieces for the ones that had some issues. And what would there were basically two things that would happen. One is either the screws would come undone. Um, so they're called Chicago screws, but it's like one side is a screw and one
Yeah.
side is almost like a hole with threading, interior threading.
Yep.
So the way that the Russian company would make them was a little bit dumb, which is they would put two screw things together that did not have very tight tolerances. Like these were not machined to tight specs, and they would put no thread locker on it. And over time, it would just unscrew itself, and then one day it would just, someone would be lifting and it would just go pop, and it wasn't the belt that popped, it was the
The
screws
screw.
popped off.
Yeah.
And then people would write to us and they'd be like, "Hey, my belt popped off mid-set. I only found a screw. What do I do?" And so we would tell them, "Well, you have an option. We could get it back from you, and you could do it." Or we had like a little video or like pictures where we showed people what to do, and we're like, "We'll just mail you some sets, and you can just
Yeah,
put it
I
back
think that
together."
was the issue with mine, and we fixed it, and it was fine. So
Yeah, and then there was one other issue with them where the roller material was like a little bit too thin. And, if you have a buckle, like let's say this is the end of the buckle, hopefully I don't get a hard on screen again, but like, and then the roller is going around my hand here. What would happen is that the roller would like shift up here and it would almost act like a bending form where like when it would roll around it, it would like expand the roller out kind of like that.
oh, mm-mm.
And
That's interesting.
so we ended up thickening that up, and we made it so we could actually replace the roller for people if they wanted it, and
Oh,
blah blah.
nice.
But like end of the day, we were charging 65 or 70 for a leather belt that will basically last forever.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a
and
good belt. It's definitely a good one for people.
and so yeah, I felt like that was a good opportunity to kind of like have by far the best value leather belt. And of course, there are people that make really good leather belts, like the Usaka leather belt that like was like handmade by an old guy around the corner from the Usaka factory in Japan.
Mhm.
Like I went and saw that guy. I literally have pictures of him on the floor like making belts,
Yep.
but they're $300, you know. And that's not to say that the Usaka belts are bad for everyone. I mean, there's some people who, it's worth it. But like if you
It's a
want to
Porsche
kind
belt.
of
You want a
what's that?
Porsche belt? It's a Porsche belt. If
Yeah.
you're gonna pay for a Porsche belt.
Yeah, I mean it's a great belt, but it's $300. So
Yeah.
most people don't want to spend $300. So I'm kind of like trying to find those
Worth
opportunities
it.
and within,
Yeah.
everything really.
Yeah. So we just busted over an hour. So we might actually end up needing to run around because I still have some questions we haven't even brushed over yet. We might need to do an episode 2.
I just talk
Um,
too much.
that's fine. I do
Yeah.
too. Everyone would tell you that. I do have one last question before we do our mini game here at the end. All right. So one, and this was I thought a great question that one of my athletes actually kind of remind me of. But as a photographer, videographer, like, do you have one interaction while traveling to any of these meets, American or international, come to mind filming where you truly know that you maybe captured something really truly unique or special?
I mean, obviously there's a lot of times where I go to a meet and I kind of know that either I'm gonna see something really, really sick, or I'm gonna kind of like see a lift that was just incredible to see up close and stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of things that come to mind when I think of that. Like, I think of like the 2014 Almaty 105 session with like Ilya
Mm,
and Nuradinov and stuff like that. Um, and of course, there's a bunch of the sessions in Rio were incredible. The 2015 President's Cup in Grozny where Ilya did 246. Um, I mean, tons of other sessions like Lasha doing 225, 267 at the same meet. And I actually have the card from that. Like I got the card and got him to sign it, like the
nice.
attempt card or whatever from
Really,
the back
that's
room.
really cool.
And I mean, there's a good chance actually that that'll still hold up as like the biggest total of all time, given
Yeah.
what Lash is doing and career and all that stuff. Obviously, I hope he breaks it. I don't want to. Uh, I don't want my card to stay the biggest, but there's a good chance it will. Um, and then just all that stuff is just really like special. And there's not, I should also mention too some of the. I just realized I only mentioned male sessions because there's actually a lot of really incredible female lifts I've seen too. Like, I mean, just like the Kachirina, just dominant performance in Almaty where she just came out and she didn't even take all 6 of her attempts and she did
Yeah.
155, 193,
Yeah. Just
and
stopped everyone.
which was like a hilarious uh, situation came up from that, which is that D'Angelo Osorio did the exact same numbers at that meet, and she beat him on body weight. Like she weighed in just a little bit less than he did. Um, so I was always joking with him about how he got beat by Katarina on body weight, which, to be fair, is like very respectable because she's the, I mean, undoubtedly the best female lifter of all time.
Yeah.
Um, but there were a whole bunch of other actually female lifting moments that I thought were incredible. Like seeing some of the stuff that Deng Wei did to me was incredible. Like I think she did 147 at 63 in Rio. Like that's incredible, 147. Like um, there were uh, a lot of good moments. I mean, the first time like seeing 2017 in Croatia when Lasha beat Krastev's record when he did the 217 snatch, absolutely
Yeah.
incredible. Seeing Lasha for the first ever 220 snatch in competition in Anaheim in 2017, absolutely incredible. I mean, being there to watch like Ilya. Now, obviously, with Ilya, I didn't see him from the start of his career. I kind of picked him up halfway through,
Yeah.
more or less. Um, but like with Lasha, I've seen his entire career arc from the point where I shot Lasha in 2013 when he was a 19-year-old junior, like sitting in the back row at Junior Worlds in Peru. I
Yeah.
still remember him the whole week. He was wearing like a Yankees hat. And I remember just thinking, like, I was like, I wonder. I figured out who he was by looking at the start list and like kind of like figuring out which, like at the time, of course, he wasn't famous, but I remember I figured out like, oh, that's the Georgian Super and blah blah blah. I saw him in the training hall. Unfortunately, in those days, I didn't shoot training hall videos, but I remember seeing him in the training hall and thinking like, damn, he's moving weight like super easy. I wonder how much he's going to do. And then I remember I had looked up what he did at European juniors, which I actually have photos of the year before, and thinking like, oh, well, he got third at Euro juniors. Like, I wonder if he could medal here. Now, of course, he ended up winning that junior worlds in Peru, but you know, just like seeing all those moments is definitely pretty incredible. But I don't know if I can like pick out one, but there've been lots of times where I went to something knowing I'm going to see something special. An
Yeah.
example, just like the clearest example being um, either Almaty or Grozny for Ilya. Like I
Yep.
knew both of those times I was about to see something special because of the type of shape that Ilya was in and just the whole situation surrounding like Team Astana at the time. Like it was just
Yeah.
like I knew that it was going to be special, and so yeah, I mean those are the things that come to mind first.
Yeah. I mean, anyone that knows weightlifting has been in here for a second. All those moments you named, you know, lots of history behind those.
Yeah.
Um, solid answers, man. Yeah, you have a digital library in your head, I'm sure, of tons of lifts. Many people's jaws have dropped to the floor watching.
I mean, I've been
So
super lucky to be right next to them for a lot of
yeah,
them. Like that's pretty cool. Um, you know, it's definitely neat to see a lot of this like up close. You know, it's almost a little bit surreal sometimes because I'll hear people talking about it like it's like the greatest thing they ever watched on TV, and
mm-hmm.
I'm like, I was like the closest person to the platform that wasn't a
Yeah,
ref.
yeah, I was right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So we're gonna segue out here into our little mini game. Close out this. I like to do this just to kind of relax it, close it out, have some fun. Um, did I lose you? There you are.
No, I'm just
Um,
looking for my okay. I was checking my battery percentage.
oh, you're good. Well, this will
I'm
go
good.
quick.
No, no, no. I didn't
uh,
know where I was at, but I'm good. Yeah.
Gotcha. So we're just gonna do a underrated, overrated. So I'm just gonna kind of spit off some topics, like I said, some friends and other weightlifters just threw out as ideas, so we can go underrated, overrated. If you have a comment on them, go ahead and quickly give it a comment. Um, and then we'll close this out. And I definitely think another podcast in the future will need to be had because there's a lot of questions I still have on some stuff. Um, but so underrated, overrated, some of the topics. If you feel like superbly non-opinionated, you can give that answer, but that's kind of lame. But these are just like anything from pop culture to weightlifting related. So here we go. So the first one being, we're gonna go with underrated, overrated ice baths.
I think overrated.
All right, squat jerks.
I think overrated.
Ooh, electric vehicles.
Um, I like EV. This is a bit of a complicated one. I like the concept behind EVs, but I feel like they're overrated in terms of what they do for the environment. But I think that they're underrated in terms of like how much fun they are. Like people, the people that hate EVs because they're like, oh, something about the carbon emissions with producing the battery, or people will complain about anything and everything when it comes to stuff. But like EVs are really, really fun, you know? So
Yeah.
I think they're but I also think that it's a little bit overrated. The people that are like, I drive an EV, I'm saving the planet, and meanwhile they're recharging at like their home, which is fired by like coal. I'm just like, all right,
Yes.
and like also
Yes,
the
thank
people,
you.
and all the people that don't think about like that we don't have the infrastructure for really properly handling battery disposal for when EVs hit the end of life. Like, there's still a lot of problems to be worked through with EVs. Just because you drive an EV does not mean you're environmentally friendly. No, it doesn't mean you're not, but it also doesn't mean you are. And so, I think from like an environmental perspective, they're very overrated, even though I think they have the kind of like capability in the future to be very important environmentally. But I think super underrated for how much fun they are. And I don't even
Yeah.
own one, but
No.
I've driven them. I have friends who
Yeah.
have
No.
them.
I've had that opportunity. They're fun. Taylor Swift.
I don't know anything about her, but I would say overrated just because, um, there's no one that like deserves that much attention for like a tour. Come on. It's like,
Man.
it's concerts, you know. People, the idea of people like fighting over tickets and blah 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 and like it being treated as like a cultural moment when it's just a concert is like, to me, that's overrated. Even if you're
Is
like a
that
good
because
artist and
is that
whatever.
because nobody's given you one of their tickets yet, Nat?
The problem is that they're all digital now.
He
Like
collects
I,
he collects tickets, guys. Get him one.
I do
Then he'll
collect
be a
tickets.
fan.
I do collect tickets. I don't really collect concert tickets. I have a few concert tickets, but the concert tickets I have are not because of the actual concert. Um, the concert tickets I have are because one of the things I like to collect is my actual birthday, and by that I mean like the date and year that I was born. So anything from that
That
date.
won't be a Taylor Swift, I
That,
get.
yeah, she was not born yet. But there was an Ozzy Osbourne concert that day, and there was also a
Okay.
Grateful Dead concert that day. So I have both of
Nice.
those tickets.
Excellent.
Um,
Um,
but yeah,
this one, I know how I feel about it, and anyone that knows me does. Males in training tights, weightlifting.
I don't really think that that's rated at all. I can't think of anyone who's ever rated it. I mean,
I mean, there are guys out there that think it is the greatest thing in the planet.
to
They
have,
all are
t
pro compression pants, hardcore, and I'm just
I
anti,
mean,
so anti.
I see the value of it as like just for weightlifting purposes because it kind of is like fabric that stays in place a little bit better than loose shorts do or something. But I don't think that it's not something I've ever given some thought to as like overrated or underrated because I can't remember anyone ever talking about it. But I see the utility of wearing, and now I'm saying that as someone who's sitting next to many
I know
thousands
you
of
are.
dollars of training gear, but
He's
you know,
slightly opinionated.
just like multiple pallets of it up there.
Yeah.
But
Camera drones.
camera drones, I feel like, are very overrated. I watch a lot of YouTube, and it's like people are always like, "I got you that epic drone shot," and it's just like, all right, it's a video of like your car on the top of a hill. It's like, all right, it's like it's cool, and I feel like what I'm more interested with drones is like the utility they can provide for like, oh, you can like inspect your HVAC or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
cool things you can do with drones, but I feel like the people that think that it's like so cinematic and whatever. It's like to me, it's a little bit like the slow-mo videos that we shoot. Like
Mm,
10 years ago, or at some point, it was very novel. The idea that like you didn't need to own a helicopter to get these aerial shots.
yeah.
But now I feel like once everyone's seen it hundreds or thousands of times, it's not as interesting. Like the slow-mo videos now are just not as interesting and don't do as well as they did 5 or 10 years ago. And there's a reason
Yeah.
for that. People have seen it so many times. And I feel like with drones, it's like that too. That being said, I do think there are cool drone shots that people do, but not in general. I think it's an overrated thing.
All right. Leather belts.
For weightlifting, or for just like
Yeah.
a suit.
Overrated,
I
underrated.
actually I think that leather belts historically were obviously much better, but I feel like with some of the more advanced Velcros, and this is part of what I want to do with our leather belts, but with some of the more advanced Velcros and some of uh, the better ones that are out there, I feel like Velcro belts are actually a better belt for weightlifting.
Okay. Uh, Hopefully you watch movies. Oppenheimer movie.
I don't watch it. I did used to watch more movies, but I don't really know that much about it. Is that like that's like the atomic bomb one?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I read about it a little bit, but I didn't watch it, so I don't know anything
Well,
about it.
it's followed. The next question was followed up by Barbie movies. So
The only thing I know about the Barbie movie is that my wife, she didn't go see the movie, but they had like a special flavor of ice cream at Cold Stone because of the Barbie movie. And she was
okay.
like very about that, like going to Cold Stone and getting like the Barbie thing or whatever.
Acceptable.
And that's like the extent of what I know about the Barbie movie.
Energy drinks.
Um, I feel like they're actually about. I think they're rated correctly,
Okay.
which is that I think they're useful, but you know, I feel like if you're going to do like a max out day, I feel like limited usage of energy drinks. I actually don't think is a bad idea. You know, yeah, exactly. I think if
At
you're
10:30 at night. To do a
maybe that is
podcast.
overrating them. Maybe
When
that's
you've
just
been up since 5 a.m. and you have to do a podcast at 10:30.
maybe that's just kind of not a good idea. But I think that someone drinking energy drinks like multiple times a day or every day is maybe not the best idea. But I feel like if you're if you're maxing out a couple times a month or something like that, and you want to have an energy drink, that's probably a good idea.
I feel personally attacked now.
Yeah. Well, I
TSA
drink a lot of
pre-check.
these, so
There you go.
TSA pre-check is incredible. I don't know how it's rated, but I feel like it's probably underrated because I still see people in the regular security line who probably most likely did not even bother applying or whatever.
Miami did not have fucking clear or TSA pre-check through American, so that was weird and confusing.
Well, they definitely had it, but you might have been at the wrong area. Like sometimes the TSA pre is
Yeah,
like at the other end of the airport, and
I know.
sometimes
But
depending
we
on the
got
terminal,
shuffled.
it's like closed or whatever. But yeah,
The Detroit Lions.
I honestly
You
do
know the
not
right
know.
answer. You know the right answer, no matter
Um,
what.
I mean, I'm guessing because you're from Detroit, you think that they're good
I'm not
and
even
they're
a big sports
underrated.
fan, but it's always been underrated. It's always the choice.
I mean, I feel like the Detroit Lions have just been bad most of my adult life,
30,
though.
Yeah, 32 years.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I can't remember. I mean, obviously, you guys have had some good players. You've had like, Megatron and Matthew Stafford and Barry Sanders and these people,
Mhm.
but like, I can't really think of a time that I was like, wow, the Detroit Lions are like a fearsome team. I mean, you guys just have some
Right
historically
now.
bad sports teams. Like
Yeah.
the Pistons this year are awful. I pay attention to
Who
basketball
who
much more.
who did you say?
Yeah. I pay attention to basketball much more than football. Like I probably spend 20 times more on following basketball than football.
Yeah, the Pistons, we're just kind of like we're gonna let them do their thing,
Yeah,
and
just
we're gonna
lose
talk
every
about
game.
them next. We're gonna let them talk next year.
Yeah, I wonder
We're
who
gonna
the
let that
number one
play
pick
out.
is going to be. I don't even know. Bronny James.
You can get a $4 ticket.
Yeah.
um, bar path tracker apps.
I feel like that's overrated. I feel like they don't give you enough info to really give you any measurable, actionable information. I mean, because you can see from a video, is the bar path right or not? Like you don't, and you don't need to be an advanced high level coach to see if the bar path is really wrong, and it doesn't really tell you how to fix it. Like, see, the reason I have a stronger opinion on this is because I'm not a coach, but I've seen so many lifts that I can recognize problems. I can be like, wow, that was terrible, or wow, that's good, or wow, that's okay, or wow, that's going to be a problem, or wow, that's not a problem, but
Yeah,
it's a little weird, but it's fine. Like I can recognize technique in like a split second, but because I'm not a coach, I don't know how to fix anything because I've got no experience with
you've
fixing it.
developed the coach's eye to see it.
Yeah, I can see it. I can be like, wow, they're going like they're just not being patient enough, or they're doing this, or they're bending their arm too early and losing some power and blah blah blah. I can see all that like split second, and I can tell them you did this wrong, but I don't know how to fix it because I'm not a coach. Like fixing it's a different
Yeah,
story than seeing it. And the best thing you're going to get out of a bar tracking path sort of thing is you're going to see um, a problem if you have literally no experience watching weightlifting. You might see it a little bit more clearly in that, but no, it gives you no useful, actionable anything, and frankly, like you can see the problems much easier than that. Like I don't think it helps.
yep.
It's a nice
And then
gimmick
the
though.
last three: sushi.
I feel like sushi is. I love sushi, so I'm just gonna say underrated because I don't see how you can overrate it.
Love it. First class.
I feel like it's overrated. I don't think it's as great as people make it out to be. And when you say
Okay,
first, you mean,
I'm gonna let my wife just listen to this one fucking blurb right there, man.
are you talking about first, like true
First
first class, or are you just talking about business class?
first class.
First
I'm talking
class. So
about
you're
first
talking
class.
about one of the ones where there's like first class, then business class,
Mm-hmm.
then premium
Yeah.
economy, then
Yeah.
economy, and then like baggage.
Oh yeah.
Um,
International first class, and then just like domestic first class. She is all about both
okay.
layers, and I'm just like, you're being irrational.
Okay, domestic first class is absolutely nothing special and it's
Yes.
not worth paying a lot of money for. I will sit domestic first in very rare situations, and I would say 90% of the time it's either because I got it on miles for very cheap, and I have a lot of miles because I spend a lot of money here, and so I have a lot of credit card points. But um, you know, there are some international first classes I've been on. Once again, with miles, I've never bought this. I wouldn't pay for how much this stuff costs, which is tens of thousands of dollars.
Like,
But there's some
super expensive.
international first classes and even some international business classes that have been like really pretty special that I've been on that I would say are a fun experience, but it is most certainly never ever worth the cash. Just
Yeah.
as an example, in March of this year, um, or not this year, March of last year, I flew to Argentina, and I just flew in coach, like normal coach. I slept the whole time both ways.
Hmm.
Like I can sleep on planes, so it's fine. I was just a normal coach because I couldn't get there. There was there was no reasonable way to get there with points. And I was not going to pay like the $5,000 for Aerolíneas Argentinas business class that is terrible. And I've flown literally 50 nicer products than that. Like, so to me, there's no experience in it when I'm flying business class internationally. I'm not there to be like, wow, this is what it's like in business, because I've done it so many times on points. So for me, when I fly business, it's because either I could get it for points and it was very reasonable. Like I flew direct to Worlds in Riyadh on points and back in business class. It was nothing special. I wasn't like, wow, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. But, you know, I did it because I got it on points, and why not? But there are some occasional products that I would be like, wow, everyone should do this like once sort of thing. And so I do think that that exists, but like flying United from like Chicago to Denver in first, quote, what they call first class, no, that is absolutely not worth it.
Thank you.
Unless you can get it, if you can get it on points and it's like the low value, you know, like if you can get it for like, you know, 20,000 or 25,000 miles or something, whatever, it's like, okay. And then why not? Because like it is nicer than coach, but it's like a couple hours, not a big deal. Like I also keep in mind,
just go to sleep for 4 hours.
I also flew, yeah, it's not even 4 hours. Like I flew to Tokyo and back sorry, not economy. It was premium economy. I also flew to Taiwan. This is all things that happened in 2023. So I flew from like basically, you know, Newark Airport, New York, basically to Tokyo in premium economy, which is like a fully upright seat, doesn't lean back very much, whatever, and back in premium economy. And then I flew all the way to Taiwan, up to China for the Asian Games and back. And keep in mind, because they can't fly over Russian airspace, New York to Taiwan was a 17-hour flight. And I did that also in premium economy, not in business. And I slept for all these flights. And so I only go in business or first or whatever when like the points and everything make sense. If they make sense, I go ahead and do it. If they don't make sense, I don't. That's pretty much it. Yeah. But I feel like it's very overrated as an experience in 98% of the cases. Now, if you're talking about, flying in Lufthansa first class through Frankfurt, where you can go to like the first class terminal and you're going to have like a 6-hour layover and you can go tell the chef to make you whatever you want in the first class terminal. And then they're going to drive you from the first class terminal in like a Porsche directly to the plane, and you're going to sit in the nose of like a 747-8. Okay, that's different. That's not
I'm not
United.
Casey Neistat though, so that won't be happening for me.
Well, I've done it, and I'm also not Casey Neistat.
No, you definitely have a shit ton more miles, though, I'm sure, than I do.
I probably have a lot more miles, yeah.
And then our last one, because somebody actually knew a little bit of your background, they're like, hit them with this one. They're like, Las Vegas, overrated or underrated?
I feel like Las Vegas is actually underrated. A lot of people think that Las Vegas is just the strip, or they think it's just like casinos and slot machines. But Las Vegas is actually pretty incredible. Like there's incredible hiking around there, up in like, Red Rock. There's like a really fun like motor speedway not too far away where you can like go take like driving classes. Lake Mead has been like dropping precipitously, but when I was out there, it was actually like a very cool place to go and hang out. Stuff like the Hoover Dam is nearby. You have a really low cost of living relative, at least when I was there, which was over 10 years ago. Really low cost of living. It's like you get tons of sunlight. It's very rarely cloudy, and it's like just you get incredible. The nice thing about the Strip is that there's incredible dining, like so many different dining options. And so I lived in Vegas, and by the time when I lived in Vegas in like 2011 range, I wasn't really gambling at all. Like I had fallen so far out of practice with poker that I really wasn't playing poker anymore. and I never played table games. Like I don't even know the rules for most of it. Like I don't even know how to play craps. Like I don't know the rules.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know the odds. I don't know what to do. I'd be putting my money in the wrong place. Like I'm not some sort of, like gaming as a whole expert. At one point, I
Yeah.
was very deep into the poker stuff, and I knew a lot about both the poker scene and poker strategy and stuff like that. But like in general, gaming overall, I don't really know. I don't even know what to do. But I loved living in Vegas because of all that stuff. Now there were some downsides, but I think in general it's underrated because people just think of like slot machines and gaming, and there's like so much more good stuff to do there.
Sounds good. There you go, people. There it is. Well, Nat, officially, this is the longest podcast I've done on this
All right,
show. So
I
we've
set a
taken
record
that
with
new
everyone.
record.
It's
There
nice.
you go. We'll definitely need to do another one to hit some of these other topics that I wanted to go over. I appreciate you doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you enjoyed this one. A little bit different perspective. Definitely think we got some cool content here and heard some really cool experience that Nat has had. Nat, if people want to follow you, obviously you have your personal and then your businesses. Why don't you go ahead and name off those Instagrams or website links, whatever you want.
I mean, Hookgrip, just Hookgrip on everything basically.
All right.
If someone's watching this, they know about weightlifting, they haven't heard of Hookgrip, then that'd be a little weird. But I think a lot less people know about my personal Instagram, which is just at Nat Arem, so Natarem.
There you go.
And yeah, I don't really post that much there, but I do more like stories and stuff like that. I'm not really a very active uh, like on there in terms of posts and reels. I don't even know if I've ever done a reel on there, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, and like I said, I appreciate your time. If you all have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll tag him. You can feel free to tag him. I'm sure he'll go ahead and answer if you have any. And other than that, it is 11 o'clock at night here, so we made this a late one. Nat, again, thanks for being flexible, and thank you, and have a good day, everyone. Have a good time, Nat.
Thank you.